Hello, Bruins. I'm Angela Scales, the Senior Director of Bruin Connections here at the UCLA Alumni Association. Thank you for joining us tonight for our 5th Bruin Career Insights, a YouTube live series where we explore career and professional development topics. Tonight, we'll be discussing the challenges of navigating entrepreneurship as an introvert. Because of your incredible response to this topic, we've incorporated a number of pre-submitted questions into tonight's discussion. In addition to Bruin Career Insights, a great resource is UCLA One. We hope you'll utilize UCLA One as a tool and a resource for professional development and networking. Check out the job postings and share your professional achievements. For those who aren't familiar with the site, it's just uclaone.com. You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, there should be a live chat function. Using the live chat, you can send us questions throughout the session and we'll answer as many questions as possible. After tonight's event, we'd love to hear your feedback and suggestions for upcoming topics. Let us know what you think. You can send us an email at careerprograms@alumni.ucla.edu with any thoughts. Also, a quick thank you to our Blue, Gold, and Life members for making events like this possible. Your generous contributions and continued support allow us to provide career programming and resources for all Bruins. If you'd like to upgrade your membership, you'll see a link in the live chat function. Now, let's meet Rosie O'Neill. Rosie graduated from UCLA with a degree in communication studies in 2000 and returned in 2005 to get her MBA from Anderson. Rosie is the co-founder and chief creative officer of Sugarfina, a luxury candy boutique with 25 standalone stores and 15 Nordstrom shop-in-shops across the country. Rosie, why don't you get us started by telling us a little bit about your background and how your career path led you to start Sugarfina?
All right, well, hello everyone. I'm really excited to be here and I love all the questions everyone has submitted. So I think this is gonna be a really fun session. As you guys heard, I am a double Bruin. I didn't set out to be that way. I think it kind of happened because I'm kind of a warm weather girl and I couldn't stay away from Los Angeles. So in between undergrad and business school, so I was a comm studies major, in between those two programs, I worked in PR. And for a self-proclaimed introvert, PR is probably like the scariest and most intimidating profession because all you're doing all day long is blindly calling people and trying to pitch them something. So I quickly learned that that was not the career path for me. But what I loved about that experience was marketing and branding and really kind of tapping into this very fun, customer-oriented types of brands, things that I personally would get passionate about and want to buy. So I went back to business school with the intention of going into brand management and marketing. At UCLA Business School, in between your first and second year, you do an internship. I had been a lifelong Barbie fan, so I had about 30 Barbie dolls as a kid. I played with them way too long, like till I was 14, I think. And I kind of always had this weird dream of wanting to work on Barbie one day. So I landed my dream internship. I started working on Barbie, and then they made me an offer to go full-time when I was in my second year of school. So I was working full-time and going to school full-time, and that was probably where I learned how to manage 100-hour work weeks. I worked at Mattel for about 7 years. I worked my way up to the director of marketing for Barbie. Had an amazing experience there and really loved it. But then as the next chapter in my life unfolded, I met a guy and fell in love and everything changed. So he took me to see Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the original one with Gene Wilder, on our 3rd date. And after that movie was when we came up with the idea for Sugarfina. We said, why are kids having all the fun? Why isn't there a candy store for grown-ups? And that was kind of the initial spark of the idea. And here we are 7 years later with this really wonderful, really fun candy brand and a lot of exciting stuff ahead of us.
I love it. So as you mentioned, you're a self-proclaimed introvert. Help us understand what introversion is.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different explanations floating around out there about what an introvert is. I think a lot of people say, oh, an introvert, that means you're shy. I really don't think that's I think that's like a very narrow definition. The way I describe it and the way I think it's commonly described is where you get your sources of energy from and where do you recharge. So extroverts are known to get really energized and recharged when they're around other people. And introverts, on the other hand, really that kind of drains them, being around other people. And where they recharge and where they kind of get that fresh burst of energy is by being alone. I'll tell you a quick little side note. I think the way I know that I'm in a perfect relationship is that, and I've told Josh this, when I'm with Josh, I feel like I'm alone. So that's kind of a nice benefit of our relationship. So even when I'm with him, I'm able to recharge. But yeah, I think for me, the thing that just makes me different versus other people is I go to a party and I immediately am thinking about how do I go home, or I go into a room of you know, fellow entrepreneurs where I have to network, and networking has great benefits, but I'm thinking, how do I go home? It's just something that doesn't really come natural to me, and it kind of like makes me exhausted. So that's the definition of introversion to me.
That's a wonderful overview. That's kind of a perfect setting and foundation for the discussion. One of the questions that we got from one of our RSVPs, Christopher asked, he said, what were the biggest personal challenges that you faced starting the business, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so I grew up in the corporate world. The corporate world is very defined, and it's very safe because at the end of the day, you know, you have a job and the whole company is not riding on you, and you don't feel this level of pressure. When you're an entrepreneur, I think the hardest and most difficult thing is that all of a sudden everything really is on you, and your success or your failure is a result of you. You're going to build a great team, but there's a level of stress that is on you that I just don't think anyone will understand unless they've done it. It's kind of like what I've heard having kids is like, yes, I understand that having a parent is really hard, but I've never personally had kids. I know that if I did, that, yeah, I would probably have this grand awakening and realize how incredibly hard it actually is. So I think there's just a level of pressure and stress. You know, work never ends. 24 hours a day, you're thinking about it, solving problems, fixing things. So for me, the most challenging thing was getting over this sort of hump of what I thought entrepreneurship was, which was, oh, you get to make your own schedule and you can do what you want and you don't have to ask, you know, people for approval on things. And yes, there is that, but there's also all this other really hard stuff. And so it took me a while to get used to it. I'm still getting used to it, you know, to be honest, but I think I'm getting a little bit better at it.
I love that, and it's true. You know, you're adjusting, but it's not like you've figured it out. You're continuing to develop.
Yeah, you never know everything. You're always learning.
So the next question comes from Gayla, and she said, as an introvert, how do you make a strong first impression when you're going to maybe a sales meeting or when you're doing PR for Sugarfina?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think something most people forget, and it's such a simple thing, but is conveying warmth right away. So that means, you know, looking at someone in the eye, shaking their hand really warmly, and really conveying, like, I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy to meet you. And you know, just don't underestimate how important that kind of first connection can be. I think that's something I've practiced over the years. I'm the kind of person who tends to immediately jump into business. I have had to teach myself, okay, small talk is important. You know, find something that you connect with. Maybe you have a little tidbit of information on where they grew up, or do they have kids? You know, like I'm looking around your office right now and I see you have all these cute photos of your family, and I could ask you something about that. So taking that time to just do a little bit of that kind of connection and that small talk is great. And those are the things that people remember. Honestly, they're not going to remember all the things you said. I tend to stress a lot about, oh my gosh, did I say that right? I will like obsess over, oh gosh, they must be thinking I said that wrong. Guarantee you they're not even thinking about it. What's going to come across the most is how engaged you are, how warm you are, how you make them feel in that conversation, and your passion and your excitement. So like when I'm going and meeting a wholesale partner like Nordstrom or Neiman Marcus, they're going to see that I love this product more than anyone, and I think it's amazing, and I just want to share with them why this is so cool and tell them a story.
That is wonderful advice. This next question comes from Jennifer, and she asked, a lot of times introversion comes with a certain level of anxiety, some of us more than others. And she said, how do you manage social stresses and protect your energy?
Yeah, it's hard. You really do have to carve out time. One of the things about being an entrepreneur is now I have a really big team of people. I think I have, about 40 people who are on my team collectively, and they there's always just a constant cycle of needs. This question needs to be answered. I need help figuring out this problem. Can you please send me this? It's just it's kind of constant, and unless you set up guardrails for yourself, it will never end. I mean, it will always be there. So some of the things that I do, I block off on my calendar 8 to 11 a.m. every morning. Absolutely no meetings. That is my time to ease into the day. There's this great phrase that I've heard called, eating a frog for breakfast. And basically the idea behind that is do your most dreaded, most difficult task first. I try to do at least one or two of those things between 8 to 11 a.m. every morning, because then whatever happens the rest of the day, I'm like, okay, thank God I got that one thing done. Our culture that we try to build is one of a very open door policy. And I don't want to be the person who is closed off in my door, although I would feel much better if I worked that way. So there's a compromise and there's a balance. If you are someone who needs to be alone and recharge, I personally recommend going somewhere else to do that so that people don't see you closed off. I think people can have a perception that might not be fair. They might not understand that you need to recharge. They might just think, oh, wow, you're really unfriendly. So I will even do things like if I need to just take like 30 minutes, I'll go sit in my car in the parking lot just because I don't want to sit in my office with the door closed. So those are a couple things. I think, it's good to have some just decompression when you come home. So I really love to cook. So I'll spend, 30, 45 minutes making dinner. That for me is my relaxing, just focus time, and I can decompress. Then usually I jump back into work and I, finish all the things I didn't get done during the day.
I love that balance. That's a great way to get what you need, but also, like you said, provide for your employees when they need to get a question answered. So how do your introvert traits help you in the hiring process? And how do you empower introverts on your staff?
Yeah. So I tend to be very thoughtful, and I'm not someone who will make a very quick and rash decision. I think that's a trait that's probably true of a lot of introverts is, you really want to take all the information in, marinate on it, be thoughtful, and not rush to make a quick decision. And so I think that's something that is a benefit, because when you're hiring people, that your team is the most important part of your company. You cannot do what you do without them. And so it's so critical to get the right people. So I think it really helps me bring that thoughtfulness. I have a whole mix of people on my team. And I would say probably most of them are extroverts. I think that's pretty common in kind of a really marketing-driven, consumer-facing company. But there definitely are people who are similar to me and who need quiet time. What I always do is I always want people to know that I have a very flexible policy. If you need to work from home for a day because you're just overwhelmed, no questions asked, do that. If you need to go somewhere in a closed room somewhere and put on headphones and get something done and focus, absolutely. So everyone on my team knows that I'm not going to be the one caring if you're sitting in your desk every single moment of the day. I really want you to take care of yourself. And what I care about is the quality of your work, not how you get your work done. And then I think also just recognizing that, we're going to do a lot of fun social events for the team, but not everybody enjoys social events. And so I always, I didn't really like when people would put pressure on me. Oh, you have to come to every single company happy hour. I'm like, well, it doesn't mean I don't like people. It's not fun for me. So I try to not put that pressure on people. And I also try to create activities that aren't so kind of like your classic social situation. So for example, everybody can go to a soul cycle class and still get that feeling of camaraderie. But for the people who don't feel comfortable, networking or kind of socializing, you get to do that in a way that's a little more protected. So I try to balance it with kind of those more pure social activities, and then kind of those ones that are more activity based that I think are a really great way for introverts and extroverts to work together well.
Yeah, I love that flexibility of kind of, not having just one thing that speaks to one type of employee.
Yeah.
So before we go to some more of the pre-submitted questions, if we were in an alternate universe and Sugarfina didn't exist, what do you think that you would be doing today?
It's so funny. I honestly have no idea. idea. I think sometimes these little things happen in your life that take you on such a dramatically different path. It's very likely that something else could have come up, and who knows where I would have been. I do think at some point I would have done something on my own. That's something I've always wanted to do. I just thought I was going to wait a little bit later in my life. Like, I sort of saw starting my own business as my retirement plan, not my in my 30s plan. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I love what I'm doing. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And I feel incredibly lucky that I met not just my soulmate, but also my business partner. I recognize that's really rare, and it's been a wonderful 7 years.
That's great. So here's a question that we got from Danielle. She said, what was the most significant thing that you gained by getting your MBA?
Yeah, so the MBA program, it was really beneficial for me. And I think there's kind of like a few parts. So one, it gave me a really wonderful understanding of the overall picture of how a business runs. So I didn't really have exposure to finance, operations, HR, things like that. So that was really great. I almost got the 101 for all the aspects of the business. When you're running a business, you have to know at least a little bit about how all those things work. One, so you can hire really good people who know what they're doing, but also you're kind of the conductor. You have to sort of see the big picture and synthesize all these things. So that was great. I think also it was really great practice for me to kind of get out of my shell a little bit more. I tended to be the type of person who wouldn't speak up in meetings, and I would kind of like send my ideas via email later. But in business school, there's a whole thing about cold calling, and the professor will call on you, and you got to be ready with an answer, and you got to be ready. So that was good. As painful as it was, that was really good practice for me. And that helped me get more comfortable with speaking up and being more vocal in meetings. Then I think the network is great. You will meet really wonderful friends, many of whom I still stay in touch with, many of whom are entrepreneurs who kind of started around the same time I did. And that network effect is great, because what I love about UCLA is people are so willing to help each other. And if I reach out and say, hey, you don't know me, but you were in school a year behind me, and I really love what you're doing, and I'd love to just like pick your brain and ask you a couple questions, always get just a really warm, enthusiastic response. So I love our alumni network, and I really love how helpful and willing to share all the alumni are.
Well, I have to say, it makes our day to hear that the Bruin family has been so supportive, and that's so easy to tap into in terms of the alumni network. Another question from Danielle that you spoke a little bit about before, but what kind of culture do you create for those who work at Sugarfina, and how did you go about building that culture?
Yeah, so we have a very open and empowering culture. One of the things that was important to me, I grew up in a big corporate, business as kind of like my first real big job before doing this. And I loved it, but the thing that always frustrated me was having so many layers and so many levels of approval, and things just took so long to get done. And I made this promise to myself. I said, no matter how big we get, I really want to maintain that feeling of we're nimble and we're fast, and people are empowered to do really great work. They're not just reporting up to 5 different people. So we work really hard, and this has to stem from me and Josh at the top. If we don't do this, we can't expect the team underneath us to do it. We have to hire great people who have the confidence and the experience and the knowledge and really know what they're doing, who reflect our core values. So nice people, collaborative, optimistic, really passionate about the business. And we have to give those people the freedom to do what they do best without us interfering all the time. So, as an example, I have a guy named Ryan, who's the head of our retail organization. I have no background in retail. He is like a super expert, and I'm like a toddler, basically. And I know that, and he knows that. But we have a really great dynamic because I totally trust him to run that business. I am here for him, and I will help remove roadblocks and bounce ideas off each other and be there to provide support. But I'm not going in and saying, oh, I think you should do it this way, or oh, I think you should do it this way. And so he then does that with his team. So, again, it has to start from the top. If you model the kind of behavior you want to see in your culture, your culture will end up that way. And if you reward that behavior, it'll continue to reinforce itself. You can't expect that you're going to act one way and then your team is going to act a different way. It just that's not the way the world works. So, you know, start at the top and then make sure you're always talking about it and not just letting it be something that happens. Culture is really something you create.
That is spot on. And I was curious, do they, in terms of within the staff, do they give you feedback in that area? Do you ever ask for feedback regarding the culture?
Oh, yeah. All the time. So we are a very transparent, open culture. One of the things that we introduced a few months ago is we have this anonymous question box where you can ask Josh and I any question you want. And I mean anything. Like, we have had some incredibly tough questions. We get lots of fun questions too, but we've had some like really hard questions. And I think that the fact that we're willing to stand up there and read that aloud and give an honest answer to whatever, you know, issue this person is facing, I think goes a long way in making people comfortable, bringing up ideas, bringing up problems, but also not just bringing it up, but thinking of solutions themselves. You know, Josh and I aren't mom and dad. We're not going to come in and solve every problem. We really want to coach and mentor everyone on the team to do that themselves. And so that's what we work really hard on, is making a culture where it's totally fine to make mistakes as long as you're learning from it and growing. And we have this whole motto of fail fast, fail early, and get the mistakes out of the way, and then, you know, keep working your way up.
That's great. It really sounds like that transparency is the key in terms of keeping that culture. So from the live chat, one of the questions we received was from Julie, and she said, what are the challenges you faced as an introvert in managing extroverts?
Oh, that's a very good question. You know, I try to be really open with people. I'm not going to hide and say and like pretend to be something that I'm not. So I tell them, I'm like, look, I'm blocking off the time in my morning. It's not because I don't like you or I don't want to spend time with you. I just personally really need this time so that I can come in and be my best when I'm here in the office. So I openly share kind of my style. And I also share like, hey, you have your style and we need to find a place to meet in the middle. And I want to adjust myself to meet your needs and vice versa. So it actually has been pretty easy, but I think that open communication is so critical. I also think having the balance is really great. Two of the women who report to me are classic extroverts. And it's great because when I'll go to events and networking types of things with them, they'll almost take the lead in going out and meeting people, and then they're like my wing woman. Right. They'll bring me in and I'll join the conversation. So there's a really nice balance. I actually think it can be a beautiful thing when you have people on both sides.
Definitely. Another pre-submitted question that was really interesting was, if you could go back in time and do things all over again, what would you do differently in terms of starting the company?
I really don't think I would change anything. We had so many painful moments, so many incredibly hard times, so many mistakes that we made, but those are the things that sharpen you. And if you don't have those, I don't think you grow as quickly. There's no better way to make like a huge leap into the next better version of yourself than to go through fire. So yeah, I actually would want to go through those same challenges again, because I really do feel like it got me to a better place than where I am today.
I guess kind of related to that, what would you say has been your biggest challenge, either as a manager or as a supervisor?
Yeah, the thing that's the biggest challenge is also one of the things that can be the biggest strength, and that is the team that you're building underneath you. So I have been really lucky. I have a team of just unbelievable people, incredibly passionate, loves the brand as much as I do, works incredibly hard, very smart, but also very thoughtful, and has a really, really great attitude, very positive, very optimistic, very creative and fun. I have had a couple people who were not that, and that is really hard, particularly when you want so badly for that person to be that. It's kind of like when you go into a relationship with someone who you know is not quite right, but you're gonna like try to make it work and you're gonna hope they're gonna change. Sometimes people just aren't the right fit. And so I've learned, this is one of my fail fast, fail early things. I have learned to identify someone who I brought into the company who wasn't the right fit and figure out a way to transition them on. If you have someone who's not a good fit, it's not good for them, it's not good for you, kind of brings things down. And now I'm kind of getting to a step even before that of, I'm really honing in on a lot more things during the interview process, and things I might not have noticed before, now I notice. And so I can even avoid making those hiring mistakes now. But yeah, people are tough, but people are also very rewarding.
So another question that was kind of related to your MBA experience, Laura asked, did you attend the full-time program or the executive program? And then what do you think might work best for someone with a significant amount of work experience?
Mm-hmm. So I only had a couple years of experience. So I went into the full-time and the MBA program, not the one where you're working and going to school at the same time. You know, it's really such a personal decision. I think there's a lot of value in stepping away from your work for a couple years and going and immersing yourself in an experience like an MBA program. Do I think you need an MBA to get to the level you want to get to in your career? Absolutely not. But again, it's really one of those personal decisions, and I recommend talking to as many people as you can who have gone through an MBA program and get their feedback. Find people who maybe are at a similar place in their career as you are, and listen. Hear the good, hear the bad, and then, you know, really it'll be a decision that's up to you.
So kind of a fun question that was in the live chat from Julie. She says, I love Sugarfina. How do you decide to add a new product or maybe remove a product? And do you have a favorite?
Yeah, so product innovation is the biggest part of our DNA. We are constantly coming up with new things. So I'll give you one example because this is a recent one. We're always trying to follow and look at what's trending and what's kind of getting people excited and coming up with something that people are going to talk about and think is really cool. Just coming out with a new flavor or a new color is not interesting. Worthy. So as an example, last year, April 1st, we had this April Fool's joke where we launched cold pressed gummy bears made with fruits and, you know, vegetables based after green juice. And it was a joke, but we had so many people calling our stores, calling our office. Where can I buy this? Why isn't this real? Please make this. And later that afternoon, we said, okay, I think we have to like make this. So I have it right here. So these are green juice gummy bears. We partnered up with Press Juicery, and we came up with gummy bears that are apple, lemon, ginger, and greens. And we launched them about 3 weeks ago, and the response was unbelievable. They sold out everywhere, all Press Juice stores, all Sugarfina stores in 4 days. So those are the kinds of things we're constantly trying to think about. How do we tap into something that is a trend, but it's something that we can put our own spin on, and something that's going to get people talking and posting on social media. So that's the most fun part of product development for me. My personal favorite candy is peach Bellini. It has been since day one. It's this really delicious all-natural peach gummy that's a little bit sweet and a little bit tart, and it is so good.
I love that one. I have to agree. So another question kind of in the introvert space. Sandy asked, as an introvert, how do you deal with confrontation?
Mm-hmm. You know, I think that one of the nice things about being an introvert is that you can help people de-escalate a situation. So whereas two extroverts might just jump in and butt heads, I think if someone, and I'll speak to both people confronting me and me having to confront other people, I think there's just a really nice way that you can kind of bring the tone down. If you can find a way to sort of take the emotional component out of it and have just a very heart-to-heart discussion, that's going to be so much better of an outcome than if you're getting upset or you're getting hurt or you're getting angry, vice versa. So when people come to me and I don't know, I don't have this, this hasn't happened to me very much, but if someone did confront me or was upset with me, or, you know, like let's say a customer in a store had a bad experience and contacted me and is just so horrified and hates me and hates Sugarfina and whatever. You know, the way I approach it is, one, don't be defensive. That's the worst thing you can do. As quickly as you can, own up. to whatever went wrong and empathize. So if something like that happens, you know, my first response is, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm horrified that this happened. This is not how it should be. I really want to make this right. Can we connect and have a conversation? I think if you don't get into a, well, you know, back and forth, just you'll get a lot farther if you just accept and kind of address that. If I ever have to confront someone, you know, usually it's situations where maybe somebody handled something in a wrong way, or maybe somebody had a behavior that wasn't living up to our values, like they yelled at someone in a meeting. Always make it in private. You never want to confront someone in front of other people. Try to do it as quickly as you can after it happened. Just, you know, hey, do you have a second? I just want to chat with you about something really quick. And then try to make it not about attacking that person directly, but more about an observation. Like, so I'll give the example of yelling at someone. I'll say, you know, I observed in the meeting that, you know, you raised your voice at this person, and I could tell that it made them, you know, feel really taken aback, and you know, and our values is really about setting each other up for success. And so it's really important that you know, are aware that this happened. Sometimes people might not be aware, they get lost in a moment, but just to be aware that this happened, and really to know that, you know, that's not in line with our values. And that's something that, you know, going forward, you need to really keep an eye on. So you gotta be direct. You can't just like dance around it. Like, you have to say exactly what, was not right about the behavior and what you expect going forward, but you can do it in a way that is not confrontational.
Right. Now, in thinking about those values that you mentioned, is that something that is actually written somewhere and discussed with employees, kind of like a code of Sugarfina values?
Yeah, we have 5 core values. They're very simple. So it's spread sweetness, which is basically like being a nice person and all the things that go along with that. Cultivate innovation. So always be the type of person who's thinking of new ideas, thinking of better ways to do things. Deliver luxury. We are a luxury brand. Every detail needs to be thought through and very well executed. We can't just, oh, it's fine, you know, that went out and it was wrong. Like, no, everything does in a way have to perfect. Act as entrepreneurs, so always be very entrepreneurial, very problem solving oriented. Don't just let something go. Like, if you see something that needs to be fixed, it's everyone's responsibility to fix it. It's not someone else's job. And then the last one is lead with integrity. It's really important that our leaders are humble and that they recognize that they have a lot to learn too, and they're not perfect. So kind of that culture of open feedback both ways, and always being willing to learn and grow, and being a good person and doing the right thing.
I love that. I love that you're empowering all of the employees to come up with a solution, and it's not just, as you said, yours and Josh's responsibility.
Yes.
So here's another question that came in from Sandy. She said, sometimes introverts have a tendency to overthink a situation. How do you pull yourself out of that cycle and kind of address the situation and make a decision?
Yeah. So I think this stems from a couple things. I think there's both it being connected to an introvert, but I think I have a double dose of it because I am also a perfectionist. And so not only do I kind of overanalyze things, but in my head, I have to make everything perfect before it comes out of my mouth or gets done or whatever. Because I am so busy and there's so much to do, and running a company is such a big job, I have had to do good enough. And that was really hard for me because I was always making it perfect. So when I got comfortable putting out a half-formed thought or putting out a half-formed idea and seeing how people would react to it, and then kind of change it live in real time, a whole new world opened up for me. Not just in work, but in my personal life too. There was a period of time where I could never work out, I could never go to the gym, and I was just like, oh, I give up. I never can work out, I can never eat healthy. And then I realized, okay, I don't have to be the perfect version of that. I can do a 10-minute workout in the morning and it's better than nothing. I can eat one healthy meal a day and it's better than nothing. So kind of that approach of doing small things really does add up to a lot. And just training yourself to get out of that natural comfort zone of wanting it all to be perfect before it comes out. Play with it and you'll realize after a little bit it's actually not as painful as you might think.
That's great advice. So a question kind of forward thinking, Danica asked, where do you see Sugarfina 10 years from now?
Wow. So 10 years is a really long time. Like 1 year, I can barely imagine, where we're going to be and what we're doing. The exciting thing about our brand is that we have a lot of different channels. So we have our own stores, we have a website, we have wholesale partners like Neiman Marcus and Bloomingdales, and then we do all these custom and corporate gifts. All of those different areas are growing really fast, and it feels like there's a whole world of possibilities open to us. We also intend to become a global brand. So I am very excited. Probably sometime early next year, we'll be opening our first Sugarfina stores outside of North America. So one day I do think that the international market, the Middle East, Asia, Europe, the UK, I do think that can be bigger than our North America business. And so I'm just excited to see where all these things go. I don't want to have a firm plan, because I think the beauty of this is that we are nimble and we can pivot and follow the opportunities. So there's a lot of things I want to do, but all in due time. And I'm really excited about the future, and I think we have an awesome team who's really going to help us get there.
That is so exciting. You actually just answered a question that someone had about whether or not you'd be going global. So you just,
yes, we are
for them. So another question that came in was about when you first started the company and it was just a few people, did you have more introverts or more extroverts, and kind of what were the roles of that initial core staff?
Yeah, I would say it was probably like half and half. The really cool thing is our first 2 employees, actually our first 3 employees, are still with the company today. So that makes me feel so good, because those were people, I mean, we were running the business out of our house, and those are people who were like in our house with us. And that's a very personal thing. Like they feel like family to me at this point. So the fact that they have grown with us and grown up with us is really awesome. Everyone wears every hat in the beginning. I mean, it's still kind of the case now that most roles have some overlap. We're getting bigger, and so it does get a little bit more focused. But I think that's one of the fun things about working at a startup, is that no day is the same, and you do get to wear all these different hats, and you get to done before and push yourself. And so I would like to keep that as part of our culture too. I never want to have a day where somebody's job is, I only do this one thing all day long. That's so boring. So I want to try to create an organization where there is a lot of cross-functional activity.
Well, and it sounds like that probably contributes to that wonderful culture for the staff, that it's not super defined lanes.
Yeah.
Another great question we got was asking, how do you choose the nonprofits that Sugarfina is associated with?
Yeah, so a cause that's really near and dear to my heart, because I am a first-time woman entrepreneur, is supporting other women entrepreneurs. We are a minority, and I think a lot of times it's just a little bit hard to break into that world. It can be kind of intimidating, and there's not as big of a support network as I want there to be one day. So it's kind of my personal mission, because I have been helped by so many amazing women entrepreneurs, and inspired, by all these amazing women. I can't not pay it back. Like, it would be wrong not to do that. It's something I like. I have to do it. And so it comes in a number of different ways. One, we support Kiva, which is a nonprofit that provides loans and grants to entrepreneurs in developing countries, primarily women. And I love the fact that they are not just helping to solve a problem, but giving people the tools to solve the problem themselves and kind of lift their whole community. Love that organization. I, as much as I can, try to just one-on-one help as many entrepreneurs as I can with advice and sounding board, bouncing questions off of it. One day, it is my goal to kind of start a Sugarfina scholarship, if you will, something where we can, kind of incubate these growing women-led businesses and really give them, the financial support that they need to help get them off the ground, all of the mentoring and coaching from our amazing team. So that's something I'm working on trying to get rolled out next year. I think that's a cause I'm incredibly passionate about, and really excited to get it going.
That's fantastic. In thinking about what you mentioned with helping other female entrepreneurs, Early on, were there any organizations that you kind of tapped into to learn from, or suggestions for those who might be watching who want to be entrepreneurs, and kind of ones you think are really valuable to tap into?
So I'll be honest, I didn't really go the organization type of route. It was more of kind of looking at women-led businesses and reaching out, which again, as an introvert, it's hard to do. So I found that one of the easiest ways to do that was to send just a very short and sweet email. Look, anyone who's running a company doesn't have time to have coffee with you. I don't care how, it's not a practical ask. So what I would do instead is I would say, something like, hey, I really admire your business. I have this question. I know you did it really well. Do you have a quick second to chat? You're giving them a very focused thing. And then once you have that kind of initial conversation, then you kind of build a relationship. And whenever you're asking for advice or asking a question of someone, always end that relationship with, or end that conversation with, is there anything I can do for you? Just the fact that you, maybe there's not, but just asking that question shows that it's a two-way relationship and not a one-way relationship. So building those relationships with other people who are maybe where you want to see yourself in a couple years, I think is really valuable.
That is excellent advice. In thinking about kind of the culture of the organization, how would you say that you balance work and life?
I don't. Let's see. I mean, I want to be really honest with people about being an entrepreneur. It is impossible to balance work and life. You will never do either one as well as you would if you had what I'll call a normal job. But I think there are ways, again, kind of like I was talking about earlier, ways that you can make it good enough. So yes, I work every single weekend. But what I have started trying to do is carving out little blocks of time. Okay, I'll go to the farmer's market. That's a relaxing, fun thing that sadly feels a little indulgent because I don't get to do stuff like that very often. Work will always be there. Give yourself permission. You might get stressed out enjoying yourself, kind of like I do. Like I go on vacation and I'm like, oh crap, there's all these things I need to do. And it's like the opposite of what a vacation is supposed to do, right? I'm supposed to relax and instead I'm getting more stressed. So sometimes you can't do those big blocks of time. Take little carve outs and little treats. Find those things that do make you feel special, even if it's as simple as just like getting a massage or getting a manicure or whatever it is. And make sure you schedule that time to treat yourself.
Exactly. I love that. So here's a great question from Albert from the live chat. He asked, how did you fund the business when you first started?
Mm-hmm. So at the very beginning, my fiance and I both put in $30,000. So I had worked up a fairly big savings over my career prior to this. I think one of the ways I was able to do that, and this is advice I give to anyone, no matter what they're doing, is I consciously lived well below my means. So when I started at Mattel, I was at kind of an entry-level marketing job. Every time I got a raise or a promotion, I tried as hard as I could not to change my standard of living. Then I would take that extra money and I would put it into savings. And then when I built up savings to a certain point, I'd start investing. I maxed out my 401k. When you get to a point where you have financial freedom, doesn't mean you're rich. It just means you're not worrying about money every day. That is life-changing. And knowing that you can get to that point, and it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, like that took me like 7 years to build that up, but I got to a certain point where I could invest some money that I had saved. I could take some years where I wasn't going to pay myself a salary and I would be okay. And I knew I would be okay because I was okay still when I was living in a studio apartment. You kind of like, you sort of find that place where you figure out what truly makes you happy. It's not stuff, it's more than that. So we both put in 30,000. That was how we started. And then we did raise money from investors at a later stage in the business. So we've had a couple rounds of financing. Not everyone does that or needs to do that. For us, because of how fast we were growing, in order to really keep up with that growth, we needed cash. Because even though it sounds amazing, like your business is growing like crazy and everyone wants your product, you have to order all the inventory 6 months in advance, and if you don't have the money to do that, you're going out of business. So we had real, you know, good problems, but money problems. And so that financing was really helpful to allow us to scale. Could we have done it without doing that? Yes. But I think the growth would have just been a lot slower.
Yeah, it was so quick. I drive past one of the stores every day on the way to work, and it's been neat to see how many more stores there are now. So before we wrap up, we got a great question from Brandy. She said that you mentioned that you were grateful for the Bruin network. Do you have any tips for, as an introvert, networking and kind of strategies for how you would reach out to other Bruins to support you or to ask questions?
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of it comes down to kind of putting yourself in the other person's shoes and understanding, you know, if certain people that you probably want to network with, I'm sure a lot of other people want to network with them too. They're probably getting a lot of emails saying, hey, can we schedule a coffee? I'm sorry, no matter what, they probably don't have time to have coffee with people all day long. So find a way that you can be helpful. I think if you can find a way to say, or just give a compliment without asking for something in return. Like, hey, I really love your business. I think what you have done is amazing. You can ask a quick question, but don't go down the path of, think that they're going to have to like commit all this time. It's just, you'll have a better reaction if it's kind of short and sweet, and then things build over time. When I go to events with other alumni, you know, as an introvert, sometimes it's really hard to like make that first step of walking up. And you know, I think being self-effacing and having a little bit of that, putting it out there, just walking up and saying, hey, I don't know anyone here. I'm Rosie. How are you connected with this? You know, what year did you graduate? And just, if you can kind of start with a couple of questions, you'll then find little tidbits, and you can almost kind of keep asking questions to keep the conversation moving along.
That is wonderful advice, and so practical, like you said, to figure out who you are and then how to approach the situation, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. So before we wrap up, are there maybe, you know, 3 things that you would want Bruins who are watching to take away that are kind of your most important pieces of advice?
Yeah, okay, so number 1, be a nice person. I know that sounds so facetious, but I really think that it's kind of undervalued. Being nice will open so many doors for you. And I don't mean like being a pushover or not being a tough negotiator or anything like that. Just always going into a situation, recognizing that there's someone on the other side, a solution that benefits both people. And if you always have that mindset of not how can I get the most out of this for myself, but how can both of us get the most out of this, you're going to see so much more success in whatever situation you're dealing with, whether you're having to give tough feedback to someone, whether you need to negotiate a deal, whether you're trying to sell your product to someone, whatever it is, that mindset is really going to make a big difference. I would say second is really passionate about, and if you aren't in that place right now, give yourself that little kick in the butt to go figure that out. I've had a couple jobs where I probably was there a little bit too long because I got to a point where it felt really second nature and really comfortable. And yes, that was great. It was really easy. I showed up and I knew exactly what to do and I felt like I was in the groove, but I have that slight like fear, you know, sometimes when you're scared, that means that you're growing and that means that you're challenging yourself. So if you don't feel that little nugget of, oh gosh, how am I going to figure this out? You might be too comfortable. You might be time for a change. And then let's see, last piece of advice. You know, it's hard as an introvert to network and build your network, but you can find a way to do it in your own way. Something that I have found just in terms of keeping up with people is sending little nice notes. Oh, hey, you know, I have a few entrepreneurs who run companies I really admire. This one company released this really cool catalog. So I just sent her a note and I just said, hey, I just got your catalog. I loved it. You guys did such an amazing job. You knocked it out of the park. I'm not trying to get anything out of that other than just maintaining this connection. And, you know, she responded back and, oh, by the way, we should catch up and let's get coffee. And, you know, so those little things, networking doesn't have to be as formal or as, I don't know, hard as you might think it is. You can find ways to make it kind of simple and easy.
That's wonderful. And it's actually something some of our other speakers have brought up, not having the networking being transactional. But as you said, reaching out to say you hit it out of the park and not looking for anything in return is really important. So it's not always an ask.
Yeah.
So. Well, thank you so much, Rosie. Your advice and your insights have been invaluable in kind of shedding some light on the challenges of navigating entrepreneurship as an introvert, but also the many advantages. To everyone who's watching, thank you for joining us and participating in the discussion. We received an overwhelming response to this particular Bruin Career Insights topic, and it was more than we've gotten for any of the previous ones. So if you missed a portion of the event and you want to watch it or share it with others, you can find the recording on our UCLA Alumni YouTube channel immediately after. Also, we want your thoughts about upcoming programming, so we can only tailor that programming with your input. So please shoot us an email at careerprograms@alumni.ucla.edu. Thank you to Rosie and to everyone for being a part of tonight's discussion. And once again, thank you so much to our Blue, Gold, and Life members for making events like this possible. We'll see you again in June for our next episode in the Bruin Career Insights series. Have a great evening and go Bruins!